It's great. I've been looking through your stuff there the last few days. But first, actually, an introduction to yourself. This is a podcast kind of project I have going for. Well, it's only last May I kind of came up with the idea and started doing it. This will be episode 20. And really, it's training, thought, and truth. So, I always had a bit of a mantra that, you know, if you look after your physical health and your mental health, you know, you'd be doing good. And then I added the spiritual side of it a few years back when that became quite important to me.
Right.
And then I thought the three of them combined, you know, if I got guests on who were experienced or qualified in that kind of realm, that, you know, you could help a lot more people. You know, it's really, once you spread the knowledge, you're helping people out really at the end of the day, aren't you?
Right. And that's kind of funny because that's how I was too. For the longest time, I was like not quite in the spiritual sense, you know, and I think I had to get knocked down a couple times, and then that's where the spiritual stuff started to,
you know, that's
take shape.
Reminiscent. It's the same as me, and I think that you need, well, not that you need that, but that seems to be the common theme, doesn't it? You hit your low point,
right?
This is where some people don't recover, or else you can find something, I think, you know.
Right.
So, well, like, we'll get into that, and I'm interested to hear your story on that. But first, we'll talk a bit about what you're doing, because it seems like you're doing an awful lot from what I can see.
Right.
Me saying, I'm teaching people how to leverage science and spirituality into purpose, and then this is the manifestation equation. Is that right? Maybe you might talk a little bit about your background and kind of how you are who you are.
Sure. Yeah, I always lead off. I'm a child of God first. I'm a father of a 10-year-old boy. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. So I've treated patients for over 15 years. And I was doing the math. And so I've accumulated over 25,000 patient hours and over 100,000 patient visits, which sounds hard to believe. It makes me sound really old too. I've been like a curator of self-help knowledge, you know, for about 15 years. I've been performance coaching, health coaching for 10 years. And then, you know, I get into kind of odd stuff where I'm doing obstacle course racing, and I've done that for the past couple years. I've been lucky to qualify for they call it OCR World Championships in the past 2 years. And as you know, I'm in a heavy metal band, Kept Alive. Yeah. And so over the past 15 years, I guess, you know, I've worked with pro athletes, Olympic medalists, World Series winners, Ironman winners, you know, now Spartan racers, CEOs, you know, stay-at-home moms, you know, just thousands of amazing people to help them kind of improve their lives and to achieve things that other people couldn't see. And so lately I've expanded to like online courses and, you know, group coaching and stuff like that. But my mission and, you know, my goal is to be in a constant state of self-improvement and to help anyone who wants to join me.
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of like, you know, real quick, like my background, you know, I had relatives who went to a chiropractor when I grew up, like my mom and stepmom and my dad and grandpa, you know, all these guys. And so when it came time for me to figure out what I wanted to do, you know, I was kind of thinking physical therapy because that's what I was in when I was a kid. And I ended up working for a chiropractor, really enjoyed it. And I was an assistant, and I thought, God, it'd be cool to be the actual chiropractor, you know, because you see people who come in and they're, you know, they don't smile, they're just in a lot of pain. They're just kind of a shell of who they are. And then in a couple weeks, they're like walking around, they're just a new person. They're smiling, laughing, joking, hugging you, and they associate that with you. And I thought, God, that'd be cool to be the actual chiropractor. Yeah. And so I went to school and graduated and ended up going immediately to Arizona. And that's where I kind of noticed things were a little bit different for me. And so I ran kind of with a group of young chiropractors at the time. And for them, their mindset, their identity was they were a chiropractor. That's who they were. And that's what they were. And then to myself and one other friend that I can think of, chiropractic was more of what we did. And so it's a little bit different mindset. And I'm not saying one is correct or, one's wrong or whatever. It's just how it was. I wasn't as fired up as they were. And, I love chiropractic. I love what it can do for the body and how it works on that. But I always had in my head that I would probably work 2 days a week as being a chiropractor and do something else that I love, which is kind of strange after going through all that school and spending all that money. That's kind of a weird thought, But in 2009, a couple things happened to me where greatly kind of impacted my life. One was my son was born. And two, I started getting into health and performance coaching. Okay. And so if we fast forward from there a couple of years, all of a sudden my coaching started taking over my chiropractic practice. Right. And I remember seeing over half of my income was coming from that. And it freaked me out, And I remember thinking what is going on here? I'm a chiropractor. This, what would my chiropractic friends say if they knew this, And what would they say if I just did coaching? Because that thought had crossed my mind too. Wow, this is kind of blowing up. Maybe I should do that. And I'd like that. But then negative thoughts started creeping in. I can't do this. I can't sustain this. I didn't even know what I was doing at that point. There weren't health coaches on YouTube or social media. I think I'd just gotten on Facebook at that time.
How long was this now? This is
8 years ago, okay, something like that, somewhere around there. And so it freaked me out so much that I decided to kind of drastically cut back on my coaching and just totally refocus on chiropractic. Okay. And so if we go from there and fast forward about 5 years, I was running a solo practice at that point, and my relationship with my son is growing and he's wanting to do more stuff. And I'm just I'm struggling with the inability to kind of shut down my brain when it pertained to work. So, if I'm playing with my son, it's just just in my head, I'm physically there, but mentally I'm not there. And so I started, kind of praying and thinking about what could I do to fix this. And then finally, and it's funny how things work out, I was contracted by a large corporate business for a position. And so it was, at that point, it was a lot of money. I just had to work and I just had to go home. I didn't have to think about anything afterwards. And so I hopped on that. I was okay, problem solved, yeah. Right? And so after about a year of doing that, maybe a little bit more, I started thinking, I'm God, I'm not growing. I am just going through the motions. I haven't learned a thing or, expanded at all in this past year. And I was kind of thinking, all right, this is too easy. And so not even a week later, I get the call that, we have this group meeting. We find out that our bonus structures are changing. So I had to totally reassess my situation. And like I said, it's just funny how things work out, because that's when I decided, okay, let's get back into coaching. Let's get back to what I wanted to do. And so, just kind of started putting in the work. And, right now I'm just contracted, a couple days a week at an awesome kind of sports related chiropractic clinic. I've been coaching nonstop for the past couple of years. Now I have my son full time. And so I'm able to pick him up from school, 3 days a week, which right now, that's the highlight of my week. You know, like nothing beats seeing your kids see you from a distance and then get excited and then just start running towards you. Like nothing in the world is better than that.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know how long that's going to last. So I got to soak that in.
Yeah, no, I feel what you mean. Like I sometimes work in stages where I don't always get to pick up my son because of my length of hours. But I know what you mean. When I do pick him up from school, drop him to the bus, you see that, and then small things are massive. You know, they can change the day, change his day. You know.
Yeah, right. And it's so cool. So I get to go to sporting events. You know, I have a podcast, RiseUpRadio podcast, and you know that's where I get to meet inspiring people with amazing messages, and I'm guesting on podcasts, and you know all this stuff is happening, and I'm able to make it to the starting line of a race, because to me that's a blessing just to get to the starting line. You know, I'm in the heavy metal band, which most people are like, what? And now I'm just in this constant state of self-improvement, and I'm able to help others who want to join me, and so I'm so thankful.
Yeah, and I think it is important, isn't it, to take stock sometimes as well and sit back and be thankful for the normal everyday things. You know, oftentimes, I always say a prayer at night and I just kind of thank for the simplest of things. You know, the health, the just my son, he's healthy, and I have another baby on the way, and keeping my focus on the external and how lucky I've been. And it's funny you say things work out in times, because it's true, and I often have this conversation with people. It's funny when things go wrong and how something else comes up on the horizon at that same moment, and things going wrong, like you say, it builds you as well and builds your character. Unfortunately, sometimes there has to be people who can take them bad hits so that they can relate to the people who are down in that darkness and pull them back out, And I think sometimes you're, if you're chosen to do something, it can be a curse in a way, but you're going to help so many more people, I guess, in return. So it sounds like you've done an awful lot.
Yeah, and that was actually one of the things that happened to me with the coaching was I went through a divorce, and it was a pretty bad divorce. And, certain things happened to me and whatnot. And when I got back into coaching, it was like all of a sudden it was all these people who were thinking about getting a divorce, going through a divorce, or have gone through a divorce. And they were just like a shell of who they were. And so I was able to work with them, and, eventually I get to know them, and they'd ask me like, well, what happened to yours? And then all of a sudden they'd be like, oh, wow, mine doesn't sound so bad anymore.
Yeah, you share the struggle almost.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about life is, life is two-sided. Every event has two sides, and you kind of pick which one you look at, but you can find the good out of a bad event, and you can find the bad out of a good event. And that's when you're really starting to master your brain, is when you're able to pick those things out and move forward with that.
Yeah, I think that's the best way of looking at life, really, isn't it? You just have to take, you take the hits and you move on. Not to quote Rocky or anything like that, but that just sounds like, but no, right. It is, it is exactly what it is like. And it's interesting, when I was reading your extract from the LinkedIn, even, you called it out almost in the same way. The first thing on your list was a child of God. And then next is father. And before you have all these, it's interesting, before you have all these listed level of achievements from your college and all that, you list them too. It's like you almost prioritize them. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the way. I think that's kind of how I relate myself to the world. Like first I got to be thankful for everything that I have. And to me, I'm a Christian, and, everyone has their thing, and like God, like I just thank God for everything, that I've been through. And, I remember thinking when I was 26, I was like, God, I cannot believe I've made it to 26. Really? Like everything past this is just extra, like just like cherry on the cake or whatever.
Tell me, were you always that way inclined religiously, or did something happen that kind of gave you a born again experience, or did life bring you that way, or was it an upbringing, or what would you contribute to?
It's kind of funny because I grew up, I was forced to go to church sometimes, and my grandma would take me to church, and my mom was very seasonal with it. Like, she'd get on her hot streaks with church and whatnot. And so what ended up happening was, so I'm a big Vikings fan. That's American football. And so they made a huge trade when I was a kid. I think I was like 13. Just this monster trade. They got like one of the best players. And so that weekend, that first weekend he played, I missed the game. And I heard it like it was just a crazy game and all this stuff happened. And I missed it. And I was like, I'm never going to miss another game again. And so, I think I was 13. I was around there. And I was like, not going to miss another game. And so I really didn't go to church until I got to a point where I was going through a divorce. And so this was like around 40, and at that point, up until that point, I always thought of myself as spiritual. Yeah. I was like, I'm spiritual, but I'm not. I knew eventually there was going to be a time that I'll get back into it. Because then, then you go to college, and I was doing other things, then chiropractic school, and I was like working on my business, and all this stuff kind of was going on. I was almost like too busy, And then finally, as I separated, and I was like, you know what? Let's figure out a church. And there happened to be one in this neighborhood that I had never seen before. It was like 2 blocks away from my clinic. And I was like, oh my God, I'll go check it out. And, I had just had one of those typical experiences where I get there, the music was really good. It's like a new type church. And I was really relating to the music, and I'm listening to the lyrics. I'm almost crying. And then I'm listening to the sermon, and it was like he was talking to me. Yeah. I just had one of those things, and it was like, wow, I guess, let's just keep this up. Let's just see where this goes. I don't know what's going on, but I'm really relating to this. And then from there, I really got into religion for about 2 years, where I was really researching different types and making sure, okay, do I think Christianity is real? And, I got into almost like a detective mode. Yeah. Where I would delve into the science and all that of different religions and see what made sense to me and what didn't.
Story almost, This is the to what I go into. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and it was I was totally nerding out on it, and I was reading and now I'm just at a good place. I'm happy with where I'm at.
It's interesting, isn't it? You often the reason I said that, it's like you're saying things that a few years ago I always like that. I wasn't religious. My family wasn't religious. They would classify themselves as Roman Catholic or whatever. We would have went through. The Catholic Church has a big influence on Ireland, and we have all the sacraments done through school, and would have that all that. And like you said, the nice way of putting it, my mother would have been seasonal to the church as well. It would have been Christmas. It would have been, once or twice apart from that, maybe, but like that as well. I always did though believe in a kind of a metaphysical element to the world, like a spiritual element, and I always pushed it to the back of my mind a bit. In my 20s, early 20s, mid 20s, you're drinking, you're kind of working, you're not thinking about it, like you said about your college days. And then I had kind of an experience where it landed me. I couldn't explain it really, and I really had to. I had one of these experiences the following day, that week, where it was like I was being called to a church. These strangers pulled up and asked me where this church was, and I was thinking about it in my head, even though I was never in there before. And I went there, and it was like this guest got up and spoke, and he spoke to me, and that kind of thing as well. And like that, I went down the path for the last 3 or 4 years of researching every religion, researching Christianity to the ground. I was in it only 5 months ago. I was like, I want to stand where he stood when it happened. I got baptized in the Jordan, complete U-turn.
Right.
But I get where you're coming from, and I think it's great. It's great to know. That's why I call it the truth, and that's where that part comes from. It's like I say it's spiritual health, but really it's very heavily Christianity based, because I am the way, the truth, and the life, and it's knowing the truth, not being blinded by what country you're made from. This is their religion. It's like, what are all the religions? What's the proof for the religions? What's the proof that this guy existed or died, or was, and what, he seems very powerful in my life, like an entity. So I really need to dig into it. That's why I think it's great, and I often think that these are the things that put you in the right places. Where you're saying, like, I know the bad thing, you were divorced and it could have been messy, but then you pull out of it and you're doing what you're doing now, helping other people. It's almost like a calling in a lot of ways, isn't it? That's right. Where I am now.
Yeah, and that's what we were saying. How you can take any situation and you can draw good or bad from it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, any situation.
Yeah, no, it is true, and it's nice to have that view on things as well, to be able to pull from that. And I did think that, reading a lot of your lines on Instagram, even, it seems a lot of, New Testament kind of lines as well for motivation. Right. I had a few written down, but now I'm scattered. But even some of the stuff you were saying, one thing you did say, and I often think it's very true. It's time to ask yourself, what would you do if money was not an object? Then go do it. And that's a very true statement to say, but it's also a scary one for a lot of people, isn't it? Because you can pursue what's expedient for your benefit, but what means something to you.
Right. And see, the tough thing with that is oftentimes in your own head, you may think that something's important, or you may think that you love a certain thing, or whatever, but honestly, if you really took a deep dive into what you loved and what was inside of you, like, that's not it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people have someone else's values or society's values or society's norms injected in themselves, and so they're just like blurting out, okay, church is important. Okay, well, if it isn't, then you're gonna beat yourself up for not going to church every week, or listening to or reading the Bible, or doing whatever, and it's just going to kind of put you down in this road where you're just like, man, I'm not good enough, things aren't working out for me, I'm not this is what I want to be, but I'm not this, when you really don't want to be that.
Yeah And you fall into them career paths that maybe not even for you, in a lot of ways. Like, I had to come to the reality of realizing that, where you're kind of early to mid 20s, maybe you're kind of chasing the more possession of things, or the nice car, or the, whatever. And then you kind of realize, then I think that happens with kids as well, that the important thing is getting back and having an evening with your kid that day, and making sure you get back before they're in bed, and making sure the work-life thing is in check. And like, there's nothing wrong with doing a job and getting your mortgage, or being smart about things. But I do think that, if something's meaningful to you, you can pursue it. Even part-time. We're lucky here in Ireland that college costs a lot less than the US. At the moment I'm doing a strength and conditioning course part-time, but I can also keep my job going, and I can also balance life, and it doesn't break the bank in that way. But it's nice that, I do think that people need to assess, what's calling them in certain ways, and fulfill that, because you can feel a bit empty and shallow, like you said. You're going through the motions of burning daylight almost. Yeah, right. And that's like, that kind of leads like right into the manifestation equation. Yeah. And so basically, just to give like a quick rundown of what it is, it's like a balanced scientific and spiritual equation. And what I say is, it's just like the key to translating your God-given purpose into your reality. Okay, so it's like the key to manifesting your amazing life, not someone else's, but yours. And so you almost have to think of it as a chemical equation, where you start with reactants on the left side, and then you end up with products on the right. And so the terms that are on the left side, you're going to have your truth plus your brain plus your big bang, all multiplied by a factor of X.
And so when you mix those together, you create the products of gratitude and self-love. So to kind of go over that again, you got your truth plus your brain plus your big bang, all multiplied by a factor of X equals gratitude plus self-love. And so you probably notice like there's that X factor on the left side, that unknown. And so that's the most important piece of the equation, because the unknown variable in the manifestation equation is you. And so you are the one to, with the power that you can have this equation express itself at the highest levels in life. And so, like, to me, that's really exciting because that gives you a lot of power. And this can radically change your life. And so what made me think about this, like in our conversation, was the first portion of it called your truth. Okay, and so the truth is like one of the most common questions that I get from clients is, what's my purpose? They're just wondering, like, what's my purpose? What should my purpose be? Like, how do I find my purpose? And I always have to start with this. I don't personally know your purpose. I have no idea. But what I do know is that your purpose is already inside of you, and you're living your life's purpose. And, to some people, that's good news.
Yeah.
But to others, that's not so good news, and I just tell them, I hope, hopefully this is a kick in the butt that you need to start living your own life.
Yeah.
And the best way to explain this is that, God, I use the term God, whatever term you want, has put inside of us like a special genius, a special talent, skill set, interests, values, a special purpose. And that's what I call your truth. And people always want to know, like, what is truth? And that's actually a biblical question too. Yeah. And so truth is a self-expression of God that's inside of you. And so your true purpose in life is an honest expression of that truth. And so when you're living in line with that truth and not someone else's truth, that's when you're enlightened, and the enlightened part comes out of you. And what I always tell people is, with that being said, there's an angelic part of you and there's an angelic part of me, like all of us. And an angel is a messenger of light. And so when you're using your God-given purpose, values, talent, skills, genius, whatever, you're enlightened and you've tapped into that angelic part of you, and you light up and it shines on the world. And this is where I've seen so many times where people will start to assess themselves and they allow themselves to be themselves. And then when they are themselves, they love themselves. And that's what truth really is it's love. And it's when you have that ability to find that love inside of you and you can share it with the world. And so when you can figure this out, like what your truth is, what you really want in life, what's important to you, that's a powerful state to be in. And then that's when you can start filling your days with, things that inspire you, and that's when your light starts to shine the brightest. And yeah. I mean, it affects so many parts of your life. Like your life will grow, your gratitude, your achievements, your self-worth, self-love, leadership, all this starts to happen, and all this is just a benefit of just finding that truth.
That's very, very good way of putting it. Like, I don't even know how you would have came up with that equation in your, because it is exactly what does happen, really. But like, I think before starting even this podcast, it's only since May, but it's brought me down so many roads in terms of that. But also since that, I couldn't sum it up the way you did, but it is like that. It's like I met a few people, and we've, even though I've gone through my lows last year, I'm twice the person I am now, and I'm learning more. And even, these conversations are the conversations that, travel as well and at someone else, because we forget that purpose. When you talk about you're reminding people that they have a purpose, and it's almost like the spark of divinity within people, that we forget about. What makes us meaningful to begin with, what differentiates us from the animals almost. And, I think that just before I started doing any of this, it was like I was going back and forth to work every day, and there was something I need to be doing, and it's something calling out to me, you need to be doing something, now. And I was only going to sit down pen and pad, and a few days later, and I just wrote out my whole thing, and I said, that's it, that's, and I realized I have the mics up there, I have I have the room to, and everything just fell together in that moment. And it's interesting, how did you come up with that equation? How did you put it in them mathematical terms? And also, how did you introduce the idea of the Big Bang in there as well?
Yeah, I think, it all started, I guess, maybe 15 years ago when I started treating patients and I started getting into, self-improvement and just reading a lot of books. But a lot of it came from the way that I did chiropractic was if someone just signed up for care, I would see them hopefully 3 times a week, probably for a couple months. And typically I sat with them for about half hour. And so my part-time job when I was chiropractor was psychologist, because they get comfortable with you and they just tell you everything, they just tell you what's going on and what they're doing and how they're progressing and how they're navigating through different situations. And, there's times where, I'm sitting there with someone who is literally at the top of their field, like at the top of their little niche, and so I would hear their issues and their problems and what they would do to get through it. And so, for me, it was like I could have been paying for this information, and so just time after time. And then on the other hand too, I would hear, what someone else who maybe at that time isn't as successful, or they're really having troubles in life, or whatever, and I would hear the decisions and the thought process of what they were doing as well. So I got to see both sides of how people were navigating and manifesting or not manifesting life. And so kind of with the combination of the two, the past couple of years I've been trying to think of how to put it all together, and because to me, obviously, getting into a spiritual side and tapping into that spiritual side of me, that was important to me. Growing up, I was always more into the sciences, so that was important to me. So I was just brainstorming how I could do it and how I could present this to people. And it just kind of happened, it was just one of those things where it was it took a few years of just thinking about how to do it before it actually kind of came to me.
Yeah. No, it is quite good. It's like X is the variable, which is you or your talent. And then your brain is obviously the tool you work through in that way. I'm just interested in the cosmological kind of Big Bang. Is that just your creation in itself?
Well, that would be more of creating what you want in life,
right?
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not like the creation of you per se.
Yeah.
But the Big Bang theory to me is crazy and awesome, and it gives us, some of the answers, some of the spiritual answers and scientific answers of how did things begin.
Yeah.
And what I've drawn from the Big Bang would be, a couple different scientific discoveries would be the space-time continuum and the equation E equals mc squared.
Yeah.
And so the space-time continuum is more of the origin of everything of this world. Mm-hmm. And it separates factors that transcend this world.
Yeah.
And so, with the Big Bang, it just kind of I always have to laugh because I heard this on a podcast. I can't remember where, but they said, well, if there was a big bang, there had to be a big banger.
Yeah.
You know, that just kind of made me laugh. But like the awesomeness of E equals MC squared, and which most people don't know. So you've got energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. That tells us that large amounts of energy can give us mass in the universe, and small amounts of mass can create large amounts of energy. Mm-hmm. Which, if you apply that to your life, that's huge. Yeah. And so, you know, go ahead.
No, I just think, you know, this is something that sometimes I wrestle with and I look into. And me and my brother have had discussions. My brother's an atheist, and he wanted to come on, and we had this debate, and we had two of them actually. But then we go down the route of, you know, evolution and biology and creation, design, and
right.
I try and look into this. I'm a fan of William Lane Craig. I don't know if you know Dr. William Lane Craig, and he has a book and he talks about the origins of life. And I'm just trying to get your perspective as a Christian or as a believer as well. You know, I do. The Big Bang Theory to me is like maybe that's when God did create things. Maybe that's the energy that came out of it. Because I stumble on the, you know, if there was mass or energy, you know, where did it come from initially, you know? And, you know, where matter, space, and time have a beginning, and one can't begin without the other. You know, if there's no space,
right?
You know, with a space and no time, where do you put it? And, you know, time, no space. How do you? So, what as a Christian, how do you conceptualize that in your head? Do you believe in a creator then? And this theory is part of that.
Yeah, to me, there is a creator, and this would be, oh man, if you would have caught me 2 years ago, I would be right on point with all the facts and all my stats on this.
Yeah, I know.
But, you know, and that was one of the things that actually kind of drew me more to the Bible was, and it's actually a thing that draws people away, is Genesis. You know, like Genesis 1.
Yeah.
Now, to me, it seems like it does flow.
Yeah.
Like and you know, that could be my perception too. Like the way that I perceive it is it does flow with how things were created.
Yeah. And
you could say, you know, different things as far as let there be light. And, you know, that could correlate to, you know, maybe when gosh, not to get too into this, but, you know, when the earth was first formed and it was like going around the sun, the moon literally was another planet that like smashed into the earth and formed the moon. Okay. And so with that, the earth was kind of more like more water, I think, and like more gassy. And so it took away a lot of that gas. And so that allowed light to come. And so from there, you know, you have, you know, different oxygenation of different things and different elements smashing into the earth, which allowed grass to grow. And then that allowed animals to come onto the scene. And it just seems like that's kind of like what happened scientifically.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to me, you know, back then when they were writing this stuff, they didn't have this information.
Yeah, no, it's
you know,
it's funny how
it's hard.
Consistent. You know, like it brought me to Genesis 1 as well, because of course, where do you start? And
right.
But then I seen an interesting Kent Ho there was this guy saying, you know, time, space, and matter have to come in. They're a continuum. You know, they have to come into existence at the same time. You know, and Genesis sums it up. Genesis 1, it's like in the beginning, there's time. There's the heavens, there's space and the earth, and there's matter and the tree. And, you know, whatever way it was written out in form, it just all clicked. And it's like, you know, this is still, and even the Bible said how the planet was suspended in air and black space, and, you know, way before, you know. But yeah, like you said, not to get too into it, but I just was interested in hearing another Christian's perspective on it, because it is something that it's a constant search for knowledge on these things. And I know even science and atheism is also searching out there as well. And
right. Which is good. I think it's good.
Yeah, it's great. Like, you should never stop searching, because science obviously does so much, and there's plenty of Christian scientists as well. But I just, it's interesting because a lot of Christians sometimes have different views on origins or evolution or the age of the earth. And, sometimes when you get all that information, it's kind of hard to process and lay it out and say, where do you stand on this,
Yeah. And see, another problem is with the Bible. Like when you're reading the Bible, it was written in a time where there weren't so many words. So it leaves us to a lot of how we perceive different things. And so let's say, just pretending, we've got 2 million words right now. Okay. Well, back then they had 20,000 words.
Yeah.
And so like a long period of time back then, that could have been a week, it could have been a month, it could have been 200 years, it could have been a million years.
Yeah.
But it's all the same word back then.
Yeah. And
so that's where a lot of the translations can kind of
you often hear debates about that as well. It also says that, the Bible is saying one thing, and a lot of people interpret different ways, but it still says one thing. And it's up to you how you read it in a lot of ways. And to be honest with you, I haven't read the Old Testament through. I've been in and out of it. I have read the New Testament, because that's where I actually began, which probably is when
the best part to begin.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, actually, I ran it. My nana was very religious, in a very Catholic. No, I'd actually say I'm a Christian, because I think it's, I don't follow into the denominations of it. I follow Christ and His Word, and I read the New Testament of it, and then I asked her, could you get me 2 things? The Jesus I Trust in You picture for the house, because we always had one growing up, and I always liked, and one was a Bible, and she gave me a New Testament Bible, and in my head I was thinking of the Old Testament, but I read into it and was blown away by some of the quotes, and I remember there's a guy, J. Warner Wallace. He's a Las Vegas cold case detective, and he went to debunk Christianity, and by examining the Gospels as if they were murder scene documents,
right,
and came back out as a Christian who said that, these, as far as the eyewitnesses constrain time, expand time, how they're located in the room, how they correlate each other's stories, how the non-Christian documents, like the Roman documents, correlated. He says there's no other way. These are the actual words of Christ. And then when you read the words, then you realize this guy was like either super intelligent or I don't know, because the things he say are still so relevant. And
right.
The parables, they're so beyond intelligent that it's ridiculous. Like, how he was even educated enough back then to come out with these things, So that's what blows me away. If it's one thing that's even evidence in itself, it's that almost,
Yeah, that's funny, because that was one of the things. That was one of the first things that I went into was, okay, was Jesus actually a person?
Yeah.
Like, did he actually exist?
Yeah.
And because it's kind of funny, because like I'll be asked, like, okay, if you had one person or 3 people and you could have lunch with them, who would it be?
Yeah.
And then I always say Jesus. People are like, what?
Yeah.
Did he live? Was he alive? I'm like, yeah, he was a person. Like,
he was a person, but like,
yeah. I'm not cheating in this question.
Yeah. But it's like, when I became a Christian, a lot of people kind of rose up against me, I found, were angry about it, and I didn't know where that was coming from. And a lot of people didn't even know. They were like, he was like a bum, like who was rolling around, and some people were like, he didn't even exist. And then, you just realize that these people don't know anything about the subject, and they're so passionate against it, but they don't know who he is or what he did, or he was 3 years in ministry, or how many people saw him after the event, and all the doctors. A lot to dig into. It taken me years to dig into it, but I think it is. There's a new TV show called The Chosen. I'm not sure if you heard of this. It's the biggest crowd-funded project of all time. And it's It's a multi-series about Christ, and it's very good. But the director said something, and I think it's akin to what maybe we're both doing in terms of, he said that he was worried about how this is going to land and how he's to do certain things and overthinking things instead of just going and doing it. And he said he remembers he got this message from a friend saying, you can't feed the 5,000. All you can do is provide the loaves and the fishes. And he said that's what you do. You just do your best and then let God deal with how far it'll reach. That way.
Right.
It's a good saying, even, isn't it? Like, you just put your manifestation, like you said, like this was pulling in money for you. Your coaching side of things, the thing you're more interested in. You didn't expect that reach, but that was in maybe someone else's hands or in your plan or your purpose, rather.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like you said, you can only do your best.
Yeah.
And things will happen. And that's one of the things that I told myself when my son was born. Because I was so nervous. You're just like, what am I? Like, I'll never forget bringing him back to my place. Yeah. It's just me and him. I'm like, what? What am I going to do? And I just kept telling myself, you know what? Just do your best.
Yeah.
Do your best. Do what you think is right and stick with that and just go. And just, that's all you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. And, I actually wanted to talk to you about, usually I go through with the guests, like training, thought, and truth, the physical side. But the OCR thing is something I never heard about before. Sorry, I'm not saying that right. The obstacle race championships.
Obstacle course? Yeah.
I never heard of that. Can you tell me how you got into that, even?
I started doing triathlon and kind of running about 10 years ago. And from there, I realized I suck really bad at swimming. Like, I just didn't like it, and then all of a sudden, with all the texting that's going on now, people are getting hit on their bikes, and I've known people who have actually like passed away from riding their bikes, like training. And so I was like, you know what? I don't like this enough to like keep doing it. And just one day I was like, I'm going to try a Spartan race. And I did this race. It was almost 2 years ago to today. And I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what the obstacles would be or anything like that. It was the scariest race of my life, just sitting there and, at the starting line, and people are yelling, and it's all these ripped guys and all this stuff. And it was just
race almost, isn't it?
Yeah, super intimidating. They got like their paint on and all that stuff. And I just went in and, just did it and just, tried my best and, got my butt kicked that first one. And I felt the worst after that race. Like, I felt worse after that race than I felt after an Ironman race. I've done one Ironman, and I felt worse after that race. And so I told myself, all right, I'm going to train. I'm going to come back and I'm going to train for one of these. And so I trained and, lucked out and did really well, and found out like months later that I had qualified for OCR, the World Championship, which was cool because that's when I qualified for the OCR, that's where like my Instagram kind of blew up and, different things happened. So that allowed kind of like my platform to grow, which was kind of weird, and then so I was able to, a lot of people came up to me for coaching on Instagram. Like, they would just message me. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. It's crazy how things work. And so the next year, I was able to do it again. And that's kind of my goal for this year, is to qualify for OCR.
But what is, like, can you explain, like, Spartan race and Ironman and OCR in terms of distance and obstacles, because a lot of people don't even know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so Ironman, I did this once, and it was just to see if I could do it. I wasn't racing it for sure. And that's, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a full marathon, which is 26.2 miles. And you have 17 hours to complete it. And then the OCR race that I did, because there's different levels, was about 4 or 5 mile run with 25 obstacles. So that's like climbing a rope. There was like a 400-pound tire that you had to flip, and you had to do it a couple times. And I'll never forget, like the first time I went to go flip it, I had no idea of like the weight or anything. I just saw a tire. I went to budget and like nothing moved. I was like, oh no.
You're thinking about your chiropractor days then.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, there's 20 or 25 things like that you have to complete along with running the race. And so it's a different style of crazy than triathlon. Yeah. But I think you still have to have that same craziness involved in it.
I think, when you're talking about the cycling, I this time last year I was just purely focused on cycling. I was doing a bit of weights as well, just to keep me off the office desk, get me out for lunch break. But I was cycling. I was aiming for a race called the Ring of Kerry, and I fell off my bike, and it was a bad enough one. Now I immediately knew. I came down on my head. Luckily, I was wearing my helmet, but I immediately knew something was wrong. And I looked at my bike, and it was broke up, and but also was my shoulder. And I went to hospital, and I had to get the surgery the next day, and the plates put in, pinning my shoulder together, and then my bike has been gathering dust since, and that was last June. And a friend of mine was talking to me. He's in the army. He's a personal trainer and a sergeant in the army. And he said, "I'm doing intermittent fasting. I'm thinking about doing trail running. Do you want to join me?" And I said yes. And I cut a load of fat, and I running 3 times a week. And the fasting has been phenomenal for me. I don't know if you advise clients about it or anything like that, but the 18-6 intermittent fasting we do 7 days a week, and I've been doing it since September or August, and it's just cut my body fat, maintain my muscle mass, and gave me twice the energy for running and everything. Now I look kind of like shit today because I did a race on the weekend. It was only a 10k, but it was a mountain run. And it blew the legs off me, and I haven't been really sleeping great since. I'm in recovery mode. But have you delved into intermittent fasting, or is it something that ever pops up?
Actually, when I was doing the Ironman, I was doing fasting when I was training. Yeah, I had about 2 months or so of training for Ironman, and got into fasting at that period. And it's one of those things that's kind of in the back of my head that I'm thinking about going back into. Yeah. But it's kind of funny because you go to a place where it is kind of painful, where it's not fun, and you're basically like withdrawing, and then after that, after you can control that, especially mentally, you're feeling pretty good. Yeah. And I was training a lot of like high competitive triathletes at that point, and I had them fasting as well. Really? And they were like, "What? How can you train and do this?" And I was like, "Just try it. Yeah, just try it." Like,
it is so true, isn't it? Because you think, "Well, I need a big breakfast before I do this race." Like, I did that race 15 hours into a fast, and I probably performed the best I have. And I asked my strength and conditioning lecturer about this the other day. I said, "They're talking about the energy systems. Your ATP is your initial energy system, then your glycogen, and then your actual, fitness." And I said, "Is that different if you're fasting?" Because I run 12 hours plus into a fast, because apparently at 12-hour mark you start burning from the fat stores, which is the most concentrated form of energy. And I found it's made a massive difference. Like, I went from running, barely getting through 3-kilometer runs, to later that week when I had fixed, like you said, the first couple of days was torture, because my body was kind of like, "What are you doing?" And then hunger was, and then if my body got used to it, and I was running like 7. I did my first 7k non-stop that week, and then that weekend I did my first 10k non-stop, and I was kind of like, I could go further. And it was only a week earlier that I couldn't get through 3-kilometer run. Like,
Right.
It is pretty amazing, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's funny when you're going through fasting, how your senses Like you just become sensitized. You know, you can smell a sandwich like a mile away.
That's true.
You can smell burnt toast. Like, oh, that toast smells so good. Where's that coming from?
Yeah, it is true because my office was beside a cafe, and I didn't realize how much smell the bacon and eggs in the morning. I was kind of it's like, oh, right. Like black coffee, I was like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
But it is tough. One thing I did want to ask you is the health performance side of things. Like, how did you get in contact? You also helped out Olympians and gold medalists and all. Is that right? Like, did they find you from that Instagram blowing up? Like, that's pretty amazing.
No, that was prior to that.
Was it? Okay.
So, yep. So that was a couple years prior. Mainly just kind of local athletes that I was doing when I was doing like running and all this stuff. I had different groups and I created groups because for me, I believe that if you can create a strong group, you guys can kind of build each other up in certain things. And so if I was training for a triathlon, well, I'm terrible at swimming and I hate swimming. So I can't just go to a pool and just be like, get a good workout in because I won't work out hard. My form will be just awful.
Yeah.
And so, I create a group to kind of make everyone else better, where we'd have a certain plan for that day and whatnot. I had the same thing for running as well. Running was a little bit different because I actually found out that I was pretty decent at distance running, or distance saying like a 5K.
Yeah.
Like a 5K run. I was pretty good at that. And so I was able to kind of draw upon getting different people into the groups and whatnot. And from there, along with being in chiropractic for so long, I just kind of met different people, and it's one of those things where when you have a focus and when you have a vision of what you want, and especially the vision that helps, you have what's called a reticular activating system in your body. And so what that does is it's almost like a filtering mechanism in your brain. And so it's like when let's say you get a new car. When you buy a new car, you see that car everywhere. That's just how it is. Like, You're like, oh my God, my car is everywhere. Well, the same thing happens when you have an honest vision. Like when you have your truth and you're thinking about that truth, because that's just the way the brain works. You think about whatever that truth is, and you have that inspired vision. That inspired vision comes from half of your brain for the most part. And then that reticular activating system kind of senses, like you will see things that other people won't see. That'll help you with whatever it is that you're kind of thinking up or whatever you're manifesting. And I think at that point, like certain things were just kind of coming to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I was attracted to it. I was looking for it. Maybe I wasn't like searching directly for that, but it was coming to me. And so I was like training these pros and semi-pros, and then people who I helped, and then they made the pros and they're all-stars. Just all this stuff was kind of going on. And I think that's part of the science of the manifestation.
Yeah, it's almost like the law of attraction almost, isn't it, in that sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but it's interesting, because, you also now are delving into the music side of things. You haven't relatively new. You sent me in it. You know what? I was surprised at how professional sounding it was. I was expecting, drums in a garage kind of thing, but it sounded very good. It's obviously made in the proper studio.
Thank you.
How did you get into the musical? I actually relate the music with the spiritual side of things because I think that, music speaks to the soul. You turn a song on, it can change your whole humor or your day. It's like, is that lifts you? Why do people have their favorite music or their songs and they change their whole mood? And they say when you run, listen to music, your respiratory system, your heart actually synchronizes with it. And, I think there's something deeper going on there. But what led you the music side of things?
Yeah, this is kind of funny. So I played guitar when I was in high school. And so at that point, there's like, I was into heavy metal. So I was, playing Slayer, Megadeth, Metallica, stuff like that. I would just try to figure it out on guitar. And then I got to college and it was like, no one wants to listen to some dude just play his guitar, much less heavy metal. Like you're not going to be picking up any chicks doing that. So I was like, I just kind of quit playing. And it was always kind of in the back of my mind, like, God, that would be cool to like just get back into it and like play and maybe play in a band. And, didn't think twice about it. And then all of a sudden last year, I get a contract at a chiropractic clinic. And so I'm working there, and one of the guys, he used to be in a heavy metal band, and he was like, yeah, I think we're going to get back together. We just need a bass player. And I was like, well, if you don't have anyone, like I played years ago.
Yeah.
Never played bass, but I'm like, okay, I think I can probably pick that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I started playing bass last February, so almost a year from now. And we just kind of started recordings. They had some old songs and whatnot. And so now we've recorded 8 songs, and we're hoping by the end of this month to be, I don't know what it's called, like published. Like the songs will actually be finalized and out. And so we've been kind of playing some concerts here and there just to get a feel of the songs. And we actually got invited to a Battle of the Bands next month. It's kind of funny. Like our name was on the local like hard rock radio station.
Yeah, very good.
And it was pretty cool because like the way it sounded, like, it's like this heavy metal, this guy, and the only words you can really understand are the band name, Kept Alive.
Yeah.
It's like,
it is
Kept Alive.
You're saying all right,
So, it's like one of those things, like it's just a blast. It's like, it's one of those fun things, because you always have to schedule fun.
Yeah.
And, I'm growing. I would have never thought I would be on stage.
Yeah.
Like playing an instrument. Like when I'm up there playing, we're going so fast, I feel like I'm doing mathematical equations in my head. Like I've got to I'm in total concentration. Those guys are just playing, like they're all like musical geniuses, and I'm just there just like trying to keep up. Yeah, exactly. It's fun.
I used to play music years ago with a band. Now we just used to bash away in a hall, but it was real light acoustic stuff, and I had a friend of mine's a drummer, and he used to play in an Elvis tribute band, and he just wanted to bash away, and I was there with an acoustic guitar playing, Cat Stevens and light enough stuff, and he was kind of raring to go. And I remember we went to the Battle of the Bands like that, and this is I was 18, I guess, so a while ago, and we were doing this 3 or 4 bands, and this young guy was there, and he sat by himself. I don't know why, I just think of the story, and he just sat at a big table full of drink, and he just went, and so what's the story? That's our singer. I said, you may stop him. He goes, no, that's up on stage. And it's like,
that's his pregame.
He did kind of heavy metal stuff, but he was like a different guy on stage. He was great, but he was by himself for the last 2 hours getting drunk, He's like 19.
Right. Oh my God. That's what I had to do. My first time, I still get nervous. Like, I was so nervous. I thought I was either going to pass out, like just faint, just straight up faint on stage. I was going to like pee my pants or something. Like, I thought for sure something was going to happen like that. So I had to have a couple drinks to get up there. And like one of the good things that happened was we're like one of 8 bands playing that night. And I saw the first couple bands and I was like, I honestly think we're better than them. Like, I think like we're legit, like our music is legit.
Yeah.
And so that helped, like just that confidence. But, oh man, I still get up there. Like I have to have at least a drink or something.
Yeah. It's tough. I don't like playing on stage anymore, but it's not a confidence thing. It's just like, I like when what I used to play is when my friends are there and we'd be drinking in the pub or stuff like that, and we'd grab the guitar, it's in the boot of the car, and everyone has a sing-along, and I might, but me and my brother were gigging for a while, and we had to arrive at a certain time and set up our gear, and we play at like, say, 7 o'clock till 11, and the first few songs, everyone's just sitting with their drinks, just watching you, and they're not really into it, and by the time you're ready to shut down, everyone's, play this song, and they're all drunk and all.
Right.
I don't, it's like it's forcing me to play, where I can spirit. I think music just flows sometimes, and that's when you play the best. My last episode was actually Christmas Eve. I had my two brothers here with me, and we were talking, and we just grabbed the 3 guitars and just started belting it out. And that's when I like playing music, And that was just right in the middle of the podcast, and we just sang. And rather than be here at 7 o'clock, bring all your gear, stick it there, play the songs, go through the motions. Well, it's different, I know, for everyone, but that's how I feel. That's how I felt after a few years of doing it. But I really do think that playing an instrument, though, really does help, and it's a great thing, Does music run your family? Is that why you picked up the guitar in the first place?
No, not at all. There's like nothing. There's no music, no dancing. We're all pretty bad at that stuff. So it's just
but it's like exercise. They say
kind of a random.
Yeah. They say exercise kind of helps your, hormones and release chemical balances. And same with music, I think. You pick up the guitar, even sitting on your couch and play, there's a release as well almost, or, you're creating something like a big bang.
Right. Right, exactly. And that's, that all brings happiness to you, especially when you're able to produce something or create something or just play something else that someone else created. It gives you, like you said, that release, and oftentimes that there'll be like an endorphin or whatever, and that's going to create happiness. Yeah,
I think so. What personally now, I'd say you have some long-term goals ahead of you, or you have short-term goals maybe. What kind of personally motivates you day by day? Sometimes I have people who are on who aren't that religious, and sometimes that's their truth. I ask them, what motivates? But we all have that motivation, where it could be some people's kids or their faith or whatever. What personally is driving you now forward?
Yeah, I would say just in doing some self-reflection, a lot of it is the self-improvement. Just always being in that state of self-improvement. And so, like we had talked about earlier, that could be physical, mental, social, spiritual, whatever. And that's what I get excited about. I like waking up thinking, okay, what am I going to do today to maybe wear my body out? What workout am I going to do? What podcasts am I going to listen to today? What am I going to read? How am I going to grow? And then what could I take from whatever I'm doing and teach someone else? How can I package this to help someone else? And that's really right now, that's my main motivation.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. So what's your, if you were to talk to someone, what's your message really? There's a lot of people who could obviously be stuck in a dark place, who are trying to find these podcasts or maybe stumbling across them. And I know, it always, baffles me when I hit publish and you hit the countries like Indonesia and Australia. Who's finding this? I'm not advertised. I'm not paying advertise. But people are obviously getting the keywords. So if there is someone who's listening to this, who's in that darker place, what's the message in your report?
The message is love God, love others, love yourself. And I think deep down, when you get down to it, life is relational. And for me, relationship with God is huge. Building other people up, helping other people, having people there when I need support, putting myself out there. That's a type of relationship. And then obviously it all leads to a relationship with yourself and having that love and forgiveness of others and yourself. I think that would be the key to life.
Very good.
Some people would say.
Oh, that's great. Listen, I really enjoy your stuff, and I'm going to keep following you, and I'm going to post some links of your stuff here as well, so people who are listening want to look into it further can.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony.
I'm enjoying the Rise Up Radio podcast as well, and I hope you stay going with it and stay going with the music.
Good. Great, thank you. See, that's the cool thing about, starting your podcast. And when I started my podcast, it was from a purely selfish reasons. In 2018, my goals were to expand my relationship with God, expand my relationship with other people, and meet people who could inspire me. Yeah. And so I started listening to podcasts, and I was like, you know what? I think this is the route I'm going to take.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like blew up from there. And so, I think you're doing the same thing, and just be thankful for the relationships that you make from doing this podcast. Like now we'll be friends. Yeah. We can, if you're having troubles with anything, you can contact me and vice versa. And it's amazing.
You do. It's amazing the people you can meet, and the things you learn, like the things I've learned just from this, and all I want to do is talk to people who'd be more qualified to talk about. I'm not very good at articulating words, or I'm not that verbally fluid putting things together, and I think that's why I was that's why when you wrote that line, of what you're doing, like helping people find purpose, I think that was an important one. Even I had a list of people that were messaging me, but you jumped the queue then, because it's like that's something I want to hear about as well. I think that people can get a lot of benefit from.
Right.
That's like I'm hopefully I'll gain experience as well as the years go by. That's why I'm doing the strength and conditioning, so I can talk to the physical side of people. And be more qualified. And I'm thinking about doing a psychology course as well next year to get more in tune with people's mindsets as well. And like you said yourself, it's great to make them connections, because you end up with a group of if someone follows either podcast, then they have this network of people that they might relate to and pull some of their meaning from, and help them out of a dark place, whether they went the route of exercising and training or had their relationship with God, which is my personal one as well, which fell onto the physical and the mental, because I think they're all intertwined, really. When I picked myself up, or I got help, someone picked me up,
right?
Who did it, and that led me down the wormhole. And then the spirit, I realized when I rewrote my physical exercise regime, how good I felt with that. And then when I see some people who are heavier, or making excuses, if they're giving themselves excuses not to go out and do what they need to do. And it might be an old injury, or it might be a self-confidence issue, I just think that the likes of speaking to yourself are important for them people to hear, because maybe they'll say, wow, I play music, or I love that Spartan race, I wanted to aim for that, or, and that's right. That's the goal, like you're not here to make money off the podcast, like it doesn't make money,
Yeah. And the cool thing with that is, and the way that people think is, if that person can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once they start thinking that, you've inspired that person.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's a thing that people don't realize, is that, you inspire people. Like you having this podcast, you've inspired people. You've got people in Indonesia listening to you. You're doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate it.
And another thing is, keep doing what you want to do, like the stuff that interests you, because that keeps your spark going.
Yeah, and that is true. And, I think that's why we're talking about the purpose thing. People forget about, focusing on that. They get tied up at work, and then they end up watching TV at the end of the day, and they get, they're distracted constantly, by societal things. And that's why it's good to take a step back and figure out what, the manifest equation, like its whole purpose, like it sounds like, is what do you want to do? What can you do? What's your potential? What's your purpose? And I think it's great. I'm going to dig into that a bit myself, just to make sure, like I know what I'm doing now is right. When you're there was a call in there, and now it's fulfilling it. And what I would say is like kind of the spirit is keeping me fired up for these things, and I often say a prayer as well. Give me guidance, give me wisdom, say, and give me help with the podcast today. Even today I would have said a prayer a few hours ago. I'm tired. I was in bed. I was like, I need energy. I haven't slept well in the last few days. I can't put this podcast off. Let me just get my head together.
Right.
I just said a prayer, in the dark as well. I said, look, just give me a bit of strength, a bit of energy, and a bit of wisdom. And I looked over my notes, and my partner and my son cleared this front room for me. And I just, and I'm really glad I did it now, because, I think there's a lot of important issues that we touched off that will help a lot of people. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you. Yeah. Thank you.
And look, like I said, I will put the links in, and maybe even talk again down the line when on an episode. I'll definitely be communicating with you. But that's great. Listen, Dr. Al, I really appreciate it.
Anthony, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And, like you said, we'll definitely stay in connection, and we'll do this again. Yeah,
I could absolutely do with an Olympic coach on my back. That's great. Look, I appreciate it, man. And hope this live in the next couple of days.
Awesome. Yeah, let me know.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dale.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.